All right, everyone, welcome to the webinar for the Victorian Community Achievement Awards. We're going to tell you how to make your nomination stand out, and hopefully your nomination goes a lot better than this Zoom session started off with all the tech issues. Apologies, thanks for bearing with us. Don't want to waste anyone's time, so we're going to get straight into it, get to the good stuff. And if you have any questions, ideally wait till the end, but if it's really pressing and it's really, connected to what I'm saying, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask away. But if you can save it to the end, that'd be ideal. And just to let you know, quite a few people have let me know they'll be watching the recording, and that means they won't get a chance to ask any questions. So just an encouragement, if you do have a question, feel free to, definitely ask it because they won't get a chance to ask it. And they might have the exact same question that you had. So your question could really help them out. So on to the topics that we'll cover. We'll touch on why it's worth taking the time to submit. Obviously, everyone's really busy, and I've already had a few conversations with people saying, "Oh, really want to get this nomination, and I'm halfway through. I don't know if I've got the time." So I'll go over a few reasons why it is worth taking that time. We'll touch on some practical tips from the awards team. So all the people who are behind the scenes running these awards, we've all been doing it for a number of years. Myself, 14 years now, I think it is. I've been running these awards, and a few others. I think our least experienced person is like in their fourth year. You know what I mean? So we know what we're doing, and we've got some tips that we just see time and time again that we think go under the radar. So we'll share some. I'll share some of those. Maybe the juiciest one, the juiciest topic is, what does a judge look for? We've surveyed the judges, we've asked for their feedback, and we've collated their responses. So those kind of things are really helpful for you in terms of making your nomination stand out to the judges. And as I mentioned at the end, we'll go over any questions you might have. So why it's worth taking the time to submit, firstly, thank you for being part of these awards, being part of the Community Achievement Awards, because the whole point of these awards is to share good stories about community champions, local legends, businesses who are doing their part for the community, that recognize that it's not just about economic gains, it's actually social impacts are just as important. So by being part of the awards, you're actually helping us to fulfill our mission of celebrating you, of sharing your story. But we need that kind of info from you into the nomination form so we can do our part. And some of the ways we share your story is through social media. So when you hit that submit button that completes your nomination, you'll get prompted to fill out a small form asking for permission to share your story on our social media. And that's a nice, easy way for everyone to get your story out there, to congratulate you on your nomination, and to share your story. The other one is with media releases. So again, when you do submit, if you've listed who your local paper is in the nomination form, then we will actually send a media release to that local paper and encourage them to cover your story about being nominated, about your achievements, and so on. So just by submitting, there are a couple of ways that you will get promoted through our channels. And that's, again, that's achieving our mission of celebrating community champions. And we feel that your stories are worth sharing. Unfortunately, in the news, sometimes it's very negative, or it's about, celebrities or these things that aren't truly real life. Whereas, grassroots community champions, that is real life. That's every day. That keeps our communities ticking. We've also heard from a lot of people. We get this feedback a lot, and it's one of those things that, I say that our awards team's quite experienced, but it does kind of continue to surprise us that people let us know that submitting the nomination, going through that process, answering the questions, taking time to think about the journey you've been on. Achievements aren't just about, I won a gold medal. Achievements are about putting the work in day after day, overcoming challenges to get to those achievements. And so by going through that process, you're actually having a really great reflection opportunity, chance to look back and, be proud of where you've come from, where you're going, and what you've done, and celebrate those wins. It's really important to do that because there's a lot of challenges in life. So it's really important to celebrate wins, even if they are small. And so we hope that you really get a lot out of that nomination process. Another reason is that there's some amazing networking and growth opportunities. So, one of the most obvious ones is that the gala dinner, which we'll be holding on the 17th of October. So I encourage everyone to pop that in your calendar. It's our awards night, and our point of difference with our night is that it's not just the winners and the finalists who get to go up on stage. You know, a lot of awards nights, they'll read out some names and a winner gets announced. That's it. With the Community Achievement Awards, anyone who's nominated that attends the event will be presented with a framed certificate up on stage. Our MC will read out a bio, a summary of some of the achievements, because we really believe in celebrating each and every one of our nominees, not just the winners at the end of the day. So in that room is going to be so many incredible community leaders, amazing, corporate sector leaders as well who actually care about the community. We'll have government, we'll have media. So it's going to be a really great chance to network, to meet people who are really aligned to your values. And the growth opportunities part, well, from being promoted in the awards, from getting that media attention, you can unlock some great opportunities. And also, we do have the Career College on board who is providing complimentary mentoring, mindset mentoring sessions to anyone nominated. And that increases if you become a finalist and a winner. So that's just some of the reasons there. And, lastly, you got to be in it to win it. The amount of times I've heard people say, they get up on stage when they're announced as the winner and they say, "Oh, I did not expect this. There was no way I thought I was going to win." It happens a lot. And so even if you don't think you have a chance to win, that's probably with an awards program. Of course, you want to win, but there's so many, we're trying to make a lot of great reasons for you to be involved, regardless of whether you win or not. But again, you just don't know if you don't enter. So take that time to submit. You could be in a winner, even a finalist or a semi-finalist is amazing, of course. So hope some of those reasons will help you to take that time to press the submit button. All right, some practical tips from the awards team. I'll try and go through these somewhat quickly. The first one is a boring one, but it does impact the entire awards process. And that's to ensure your name is listed how you want it to be referred to. And it says here in the presentation on the certificate, but also in media releases and social media. When we are writing up our scripts for the awards night, we introduce you. That name will carry through. So the easiest example is if you are known by like a nickname or an informal name, but you would like your formal name to be referenced, just make sure that's kind of listed there in the nomination form. Or for a business or organization, if it's important to have, the correct name word for word and letter for letter, for example, if it's a proprietary limited or something like that, just have that listed in the correct field. And if you have any questions about it, email us, CAA, which stands for Community Achievement Awards, CAA@awardsaustralia.com, and we can always provide some guidance if you need. Just put that email address in the chat. And that's monitored by our whole team. That way, you won't get missed. If you email it to me directly, I'm sorry to tell you, it may likely get missed. Apologies. CAA@awardsaustralia.com is definitely the one to send it to. The next point is to write your answers the way you feel comfortable, because a common question we get is, should I write in the first person or the third person, for an individual nomination, especially if you've been nominated by someone else. You can feel like, oh, I don't know if I want to write about myself. I don't want to be seen to toot my own horn, but it's not really about that, is it? It's about putting your best foot forward and getting your message out there, whatever that may be. You're not tooting your own horn. We're proud of our achievements. That's the way it should be. So write your answers the way you feel comfortable. There's no right or wrong answer. The only thing I would say about that is try to be consistent. For example, if you answer one question the first person, then the next question the third person, it could be a bit confusing for the judges who are reading over it. And I said here, inject your personality. If you think about the judges reading application after application, if you're really writing it how you normally talk, or if you like to make a joke or that kind of thing, feel free to put that in the nomination, because you could make the judges smile, stand out to them a little bit more, and also you'll feel more comfortable if you're just writing how you normally do, rather than pretending to write really formally if that's not your normal style. Another practical tip from us, the awards team, is to let you can enter into 2 categories. The reason we suggest this one is a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not sure which category to enter. It could be this category or it could be that category. Instead of trying to pick and potentially choose the wrong one, pick one to start with, focus on that, submit just that first category, and then you can take the nomination you've done and you can use a lot of that information in a second category. Now, this is especially relevant when we have some categories such as Local Legend Award and Community Group Award, that are quite, you know, general. There's no real niche category guidelines in those categories. So we're going to have a lot of different types of organizations and people nominating into that, which is great. But at the same time, if there is a category that maybe is a bit more niche and you fit into it, into that one as well, because it could be good to be across both. So just food for thought there. Secondly, we also hear from people that, they're a little hesitant to put themselves out there, and they feel and again, I said before, like, it's a people don't want to toot their own horn, and it's understandable, it's human nature. And so one thing that we've found is when people, nominate someone else and they can feel like they're going through the journey with someone, you can then be a cheerleader for them and support each other. That people tend to really like that. So that's just a bit of feedback that we've had from our team as well. All right, moving on to the good stuff. What are the judges looking for? So, with the Community Achievement Awards, we've got, I think did look just before this, I believe it's 25 judges. It's around that number. So, there's a lot of different judges, and, of course, from different backgrounds, from different walks of life, different professional experiences. So, with that wide panel, we've gone out and asked them for some feedback. What do they look for? What stands out to them as a judge? And these are some of the most common ones we've got, and the ones that they've said to us really make a difference. So, and of course, this goes beyond things like answer all the questions. That's just obvious. Answer each of the awards questions in your nomination. But beyond that, they've said provide at least one referee. So that was really common, the most common one. And what we found when we asked, why is that important, is the judges are saying that's showing that, it's not just what the nominee or the nominator has written in the form. There's someone else there that's, backing that up. That's saying, yep, I vouch for them. And to take that tip from a good tip to a great tip, ask your referee to provide a letter of support, which is a fancy way of saying a testimony or a reference for you. And, bonus tips for making that letter of support specific to the Community Achievement Awards. So again, the reason the referee is good is adding an additional person there to kind of vouch for the nominee. The judges could contact that referee as well. The letter of support then, is really putting a written statement in, showing the judges that this is really, this person is amazing. The impact is seen in the community. And, you can target the referee accordingly. So just a very generic example, if you're a surf lifesaving club and you've got a volunteer who's doing an amazing job, the president of the surf lifesaving club as a referee with that letter of support is amazing. That's obviously, you've got someone who knows the club, who knows what the volunteers are doing, knows the community, and they're vouching for us. That's kind of what I'm talking about with a referee. Probably not your best mate or something like that. Try and think about who it could be, someone who knows your work and your impact really well. The next one is to use the attachments as evidence. So as I said before, the written questions is, that's the baseline. We're filling out those questions that you need to fill out all those questions to kind of have a chance to progress to the next round. And then from there, there's attachments that you can upload to support your nomination. And the key word there is supporting. They're not the main thing the judges are looking for. So the attachments are to back up the written answers. That's why I use the word evidence there. So and again, we're using generic examples. Apologies if they don't apply to you, but I'm sure you can, mold them to fit. If in your nomination you've written, I spoke at a community event in front of 100 people and delivered this education piece on health in the community. That's really good. And then you should attach a photo of you on stage speaking at the event. That's how we use photos as evidence rather than just, adding a bunch of headshots, which are nice, and they show who you are. We show you delivering what you wrote in the question as the evidence, you actually doing that. If you're a business, for example, so we have the business for good category, and you talk about your community programs and my staff volunteered this many hours, then attaching your community report or your end of year report showing the stats and all that, that's how we back up the answer in the question. So they're the kind of examples of how we use the attachments. It can be tempting just to add in 10, photos of you or group shots of people in the community. That's really nice, but just let's focus on making sure those photos are telling a story and they're relevant to what is being written in the nomination. So I hope that makes sense. Again, at the end, feel free to ask me any questions on that. The next one is a common one, and it's refer to the category description. And this one comes up because sometimes, we're busy, we're grabbing information from another report we've done or a grant we've applied for or off our website and copy pasting into the nomination form. It's a nice, quick, easy way to get a nomination submitted. But if it doesn't refer to what category you're in, or even some of the questions that you're answering, the judge is not going to, stand out to the judges because it's not going to, really be that relevant. So a way around that is to, just like with a job ad, and there's key selection criteria, treat the award category description as such. Read through it, you'll find keywords in there, reflect them back in your answer. Now the judge is seeing that answer going, oh, okay, wow, they're really addressing the awards criteria. They're referencing it and they're answering it specifically. So you can do that with some of the generic information I said before, website and those kind of things, but you just mold it to fit the question. The other thing I'll quickly say about that is, judges are pretty savvy with AI these days as well. So if you're using, Claude or ChatGPT to answer your questions, they'll pick it up pretty quickly. So you can definitely use it to summarize information, use it to give you prompts and stuff like that. But it is still best to write yourself. And again, that's why I say inject your own personality, because it stands out a lot more when judges are reading a sea of AI applications. Seen a question come through. I'll quickly answer it because it's very relevant to what we're talking about. The question is, did the judge Google search some of the candidates? And yes, so we have different judges. I think I skipped over that. Apologies. We've got different levels of judges. We've got some judges that look at just the category and some judges that look at the overall nominations. And that way we've got the category judges, they're drilling in a little deeper to the nominations for their category. And yes, they do, Google searches and things like that. And then the overall judges, they're more looking at the overall picture. And so we have both, which works really well. So I hope that answers the question. Next one, showcase your purpose and impact. So what that means is, and I've hinted a little bit at this already, is we're building a story, right? We're injecting your personality. We're using the photos or the documents as evidence to kind of back up what you've written. And so this one, I probably should have had it higher in the order, to be honest. Now I'm talking about it. This one is about structuring your written answers in a way that make a lot of sense. It's almost like persuasive writing. So if we remember, the judges are, they may be not familiar with your work. So you've got to introduce what you're doing to them. And one of the key things about that is explaining why you're doing it. What's the purpose behind it? So you want to outline how you got started, what's the history behind it, what's the reason, the purpose of your community work or your business that is really involved in the community. And then you want to bring that home by talking about the impact it made. And that's, again, where we're talking about using attachments as evidence. We're talking about what's the impact. So we can use some stats there if you have them, some testimonials or letters of support that's showing impact, who's benefiting, that kind of thing. So we structure it as outlining the purpose of it, the why. Then there's the what, what am I doing? These are the activities. And then here's the impact of those activities. So I hope that makes sense. That's just kind of how judges have outlined to us. That really helps them to pick out the top nominations. And lastly, be specific where you can. And again, because we're bringing judges across, from so many different fields and sectors and backgrounds, you might have experts in some areas. Others are a bit more, general, like a community leader. So you need to explain what you're doing and be specific. Use information and statistics if it's relevant, but also just, that tip is about not using, really techie jargon or scientific jargon, that kind of stuff, or abbreviations. If you find that there's a lot of that in your nomination, try and explain it a little bit more, just so that we're not leaving anything to chance. We don't want to assume that people know what you're talking about. So the other thing I would say about that one is I remember this great example. We had this guy, and he was nominated by someone else, to be fair. So he was just kind of filling out the form slightly reluctantly. And, the question's like, what's your community work entail? And he wrote something like, oh, I volunteer a little bit in the community. Anyway, we end up talking to him because we're like, oh, we want a bit more information. This is like literally one sentence. And so we're asking, what kind of volunteering do you do? How, you say you volunteer a little bit. Anyway, it turns out he was volunteering like 50, 60 hours a week, every single week. And he was impacting so many people, helping people. And we ended up, getting some of this information out of him and saying, you need to write this down because this is amazing. And eventually we did do that, not as much as we would have liked, but that's an example of, he was just kind of saying, I volunteer a little bit. Be specific. What do you volunteer in? How many hours are you volunteering and who are you helping? Kind of unpack that a little bit. All right, so I hope that's all helpful. We're going to go over to any questions people might have. So feel free to pop it in the chat, the text chat if you prefer. Take yourself off mute and ask away. Now's the time. And if you don't have any questions or you don't want to ask now, that's okay. You can email us caa@awardsaustralia.com. But as I said before, people watching this back later won't get the chance to chat. To ask a question. So your question, may really answer what they were going to ask as well.
Hi, Josh. Can I start with questioning?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Gur, and I'm trying to create an application for the Foundation Health and Wellbeing Award.
Yep.
So the story is I work for an NGO that helps students and internationals and multicultural people of the CALD background, and
Mhm.
to help them out, we created a public health website for them, and we were partnered with many organizations, many hospitals, and supporters. So I would like to ask, with the NGO I work with, right, when I'm, filling out the nominee details, do I add just the name of the NGO that I'm part of, or do I put any more, names there, or do I put the name of the president and founder for the nominee details?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you there is a drop down where you can select whether it's an individual or a group organization
Yeah.
nomination. So you put group there by the sounds of it. And then, whoever's the main person filling out the form is listed as the contact person. But
Mhm.
then you could list one of them as the referee, I suppose, because they're
Mhm.
quite relevant. You need the CEO or something like that. But then you
Mhm.
really is using the question box. So question one is typically around, provide more information, and that's the question you'll use to provide information on who is involved and exactly who and what's being nominated, if that makes sense. So that's where we're getting into some of these tips of being specific, because if it's a program that's being run by the company, then that's where you want to outline that this specific program is being nominated for this work, or is it the organization in general? So,
It's mainly the public health website, the program that
yeah, perfect.
putting forward there. Yeah.
So in that case, you want to be really specific about that and saying this is the program that's being nominated. Here's the outline of what it is, who's been involved with it, what it's achieving.
Mhm. Thank you.
No worries. I hope that's helpful. I've got a question here in the chat, so I'll just read it out for everyone. Am I correct in understanding that two submissions can't be worked on simultaneously? Yes, that is correct. So apologies about that. It is a bit of a limitation of our nomination form. However, we do find it works well to tackle one, submit one, and then if you get time for a second, great, go ahead. And as I'm sure you've seen, when you update your nomination, you get emailed a copy of the PDF. So when you've finished it, you get the completed copy, and then you can use that as a bit of a basis for the next one. So I hope that makes sense. The other
Thank
thing you can do is email our CAA@awardsaustralia.com, and we can provide you with a Word document if you like, if that's easier, so you can work on two at once.
Okay,
We
thank you.
can do that. No worries. Happy to help. Another question here in the chat, is it one piece of evidence per attachment, or can we have multiple pieces of evidence? So here's where you can decide if you want to be sneaky or not. We can have 10 files uploaded as attachments. So there's nothing stopping you from uploading 10 PDF documents of 100 pages each, as long as it fits within the 3 MB or 4 MB limit. That said, you're going to drive the judges crazy, and you have the opposite of what you're trying to achieve, and it'll be overwhelming for them. So what we want to do is really try and keep it concise where possible. And it's one of the reasons we only have like 5 or 6 questions in the form, is because concise, accurate information is better sometimes than thesis level information for these types of things. So to answer the question properly, I would try and limit the number of pages or things like that you'd have in per attachment. Without knowing the specific example, it's hard to give you that kind of advice, but I think it will work well to have one piece of evidence per, just based on my experience with the judges and knowing how they review applications. I hope that helps. Is there an ideal number of supporting letters? Really good question. Again, it becomes a bit of if you have 10 of them, it's almost like it's a bit too many almost, which sounds counterintuitive. Because obviously when you have like a petition, you want as many as you can get. I would say 2 targeted and high quality letters is plenty. 1 is probably enough, because again, it's just showing that someone else is really vouching for you and backing you up. 2 obviously takes that to the next level. So I'd hate to, ask you to spend so much time going out and getting 5, 10 and more. Like I said, it's not really a compounding benefit. The 1 or 2 is enough, and it has a really strong benefit. Sorry, I missed one part of the question here. And should we quote them in the application responses? Yeah, if they're really relevant, they're really good, and they're really powerful letters of support, certainly. And again, what you're doing is pointing the judges to it. So the judges are instructed to review all the questions first and foremost, and then look at the uploaded documents secondly. So again, if you're really pointing them towards it, then it's just drawing the conclusion and kind of, leading them to that. So I think that's a good idea.
Hi, Josh. Jane here.
Hey, Jane.
Are we able to attach videos rather than letters of support, or do they have to be documents?
Very good question. So we can't accept videos uploaded just due to the file size, and it just brings a strain on the server. But you can get around it. Again, this is the being sneaky in a good way. Is you can have a video shared to a public share file like a OneDrive or that kind of thing, Dropbox, as long as it's publicly shared so that a judge can access it, and you can include that in the written answer or as in an attachment document. I would, to be honest, if it's I'd put it in the question box, just because again, the judges are reading that, so that they're more likely to really go through and include it as part of the answer. So again, don't overdo it with the videos, but if you've got something that really is, backing up what you're writing, or explaining it in a way that, video does that very well, then yes, you can do that. All right, I've got to warn everyone, I've only got a couple of minutes left. What was this last question? Do we need to include contact details in each supporting letter? You can, but as long as they're in the referee details part in the nomination form, it's fine. And can links to social media posts and videos be used? Yes, I think I just covered that. Hopefully you can, use the same advice there to use the links, whether it's social media, whether it's you got covered in the local paper, and you've got a link to the story, that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Question here, Josh. Is there any priority groups or priority categories within the categories? Is there every different priorities for the agency, or is it standard based on how quality is your application?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. No, we don't
Because
have
sometimes because sometimes it's about how good is your writing skills and setup skills.
Yes.
And the good ones sometimes doesn't show because maybe I know ChatGPT is there, but still, I mean, if you are a first or second generation in Australia, it's not like you've been since 1980,
No, it's a great
you know,
question, Joseph. I'm going
150
to answer
years.
it quickly because I'm mindful that we've only got a few minutes left. So it's a great question. And yes, naturally, if you're a skilled writer, your nomination is going to stand out more because this is a written submission process. However, we do have a number of multicultural judges on our panel, and we do that very mindfully to ensure that that's something being considered, that some people who is English as a second language could be potentially disadvantaged. The other thing is to remember is this is the Community Achievement Awards. And so we make that really clear to our judges that whilst a written nomination is obviously what we're referring to factor in things like that at all times. And our team, whilst we don't judge the awards, we're there facilitating. Me personally, I'll be there during the judging processes, and that's something I'm really mindful of as well. So it's a great question, and we do our absolute best to make sure that everyone's considered equally, everyone has a chance of progressing, and we take that into account. So that's why these things like a referee, like putting in the attachments and the evidence like that, is taking steps to mitigate the full reliance on how skilled you are at writing an application. So I hope that answers your question, Joseph. Can we include an Excel file of all the publicity and social media posts as part of the attachments instead of full videos? I haven't seen that. It's a great question. I like it. I love Excel. So for me, I'm all for it. I think, yeah, as long as the you can attach it, an Excel document, I believe, will be fine. Go ahead. Apologies not giving you a better answer for that one. There was one here, question, if we type video links in, how will the judges access to it? So you can just test. That's the easiest way. If you're pasting a link in, rather than type it, I would make sure you're copy pasting so that it's the correct link. So you're not making a typo there. And then when you save it, just test, did that link actually work? So when you save or submit, you get an email with a PDF copy of the nomination. The link will appear there so you can test it. That's the way I would do it. Alrighty, I think that's about all we have time for. So hopefully we've answered everyone's questions. And I just want to say the ones who have stuck around, all the best for your nomination. I can't wait to read them all, to look over them, and encourage you to fill out that little permission form so that we can share your nomination on our socials. It's one of my favorite things to see. And so all the best to you. You're all amazing, and hopefully get a chance to meet you at the awards night on the 17th of October. That's all I've got. So yeah, have a great rest of your day and talk soon, hopefully. See you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.